I start every morning alone. I reflect. Some people pray, some people meditate, whatever your deal is. Find a way to get yourself ready to go. So each morning I pray. I feel like I put an armor on, ready for the day, because I know there'll be ups and downs. But what it does for me, it centers me and keeps me in the present. And when you're in the present, you can see what's right in front of you. Even when someone's telling you it's great, you can look at them. If you're present, you can listen.
Today, I have an amazing leader that is going to share with you his wisdom and his enthusiasm for life, because I just spent a couple of minutes speaking to this young man, and I know that you are going to have so much you can learn from him. But before we go any further, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. So today, it is truly a pleasure for me to introduce you to this man who is or was, right, the president of Comcast West Division for 11 years. In other words, he's sort of kind of a big deal. And I am going to let our guest today just tell you about all his wisdom rather than me present it and diminish it in my own little way. So welcome, Steve White.
Thank you, Patty Ann. It is so nice to be here with you. I love your energy. I feel it. Hopefully your audience will feel our energy and come away inspired to go do big things.
Thank you. All right. So Steve, here's the scoop. So I did a little bit of research, not too much, because, I'm sort of kind of a busy person too. Did a little bit. I got to tell you something. I could not find one thing about Steve, the man, personal life. So anything that you feel comfortable sharing, pray tell, because I believe in the whole person. Wherever you are in life, you bring your whole self. I know it sounds so cliched, but it's true. So I want to know, I know the successful Steve White, right? Because I can read, but I want to know about the man. Is there a husband? Is there a father? Is there a pet lover? Is there an athlete, a musician? So tell us.
I think we only have a few minutes, so I'll try to be quick, Patty Ann. But
Don't be quick.
Call me the American story. I grew up in the housing projects of Indianapolis, Indiana, single mother, raised 4 knucklehead boys all by herself. I'm the biggest knucklehead. She was.
Are you the only one that's bald now, or do the others still have their hair?
We've got 3 that are bald, so it happens.
Wow.
It kind of happens, and once you start, you just take it all off. So
I thought she'd be pulling her hair out of her head with 4 boys.
No, my brother calls it "come on home." Once that one spot comes, you come on home and take it off. But grew up in the housing projects of Indianapolis, single mother, raised 4 boys. She had an 8th grade education, high school janitor for 35 years. And that's my story. I started there. And so I learned about hard work and teamwork. And we didn't realize we were poor. We felt rich because we had a mom that loved us. Our dad was not around. And I remember Patty, and her first job was cleaning motel rooms. I was 11 years old. She had just left my dad. And she would take us on the weekends because she couldn't afford a babysitter during year. And we would help her clean motel rooms when we were 10, 11, or 12 years old. And I'm here to tell you, Patty Ann, when you clean motel rooms, now this is motel with an M, not hotel with an H, right? Yep. There's no in-room dining. There's no spa. This is a place where you pull your car up and your doors.
The no-tell motel.
There you go. People treat those places like you can't imagine. Yeah. But watching my mother clean those rooms with a fantastic attitude and a willingness to help and show us really form the person that I like to call Steve White. And through that, I learned that I was placed on this earth for a reason. There's no reason I would go through that and come out of that unless there was a purpose for my life. So this journey for me has been about living my purpose for me, which is about creating that table of prosperity for as many people as possible. Mark Twain has a famous quote: "The 2 most important days in your life, Patty Ann, the day you're born, and the second is when you know why." All of us should be in that thirst to find why we've been placed on this earth. And so my goal now is, how do I make a difference in as many folks' lives as possible? So when you provided the opportunity to come hang out with you, why not? Because hopefully through this conversation, you and I will inspire, even if it's just one person, right, then we've done a good job today.
Oh, thank you so much. So for the listeners, Steve and I were speaking before we went live, and I didn't realize we both had very strong moms. I was telling my listeners know that my mom was widowed very young, raised 5 kids. And we owe so much, to our parents and to the opportunity of being born in this great country. I don't care if that's politically correct or not. I will say it. But Steve, I still want to know about Steve, the man, personal.
Married to a wonderful woman named Barbita. We have a son. His name is Stephen Andrew White II. He's now 10 years old. And check this out, Patty Ann. We share the same birthday, December 18th. He's 10 years old. So now when I ask my wife, where's my birthday gift? She points, she says, "Hit a boy there." You know how I carried him, that big boy, for 9 months.
I love that woman.
That's a birthday gift. And so that's my life. I have 3 brothers. They're all doing, very, very well. I'm the oldest. We reside here in Denver, Colorado. This is where my son was born. And so this has kind of become home.
Awesome.
Past about 22 years. Recently, I was the president of Comcast West, and now I'm special advisor and special counsel supporting the CEO of Comcast Cable. So
that sounds like the coolest job on the planet. Like the special counsel. I'm like, I'm going to ask Steve how I get that job, because it sounds like it's really lucrative and I don't know.
It's called working hard 11 years, helping Comcast make a lot of money. So
there you go. There you go.
It gives me an opportunity to broaden my scope and do things. I wrote my first book that was released March 8th of last year. I've been out promoting that, and that's been really exciting. So it gives me an opportunity to do a number of things while still helping Comcast. So great. It's a great situation for me.
Great. So Steve, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? Like, what is it that you think about and you're like, I can never do or think enough of this?
Making a difference. Let me share a story with you. Last summer, a UPS driver brings a package to my home. I meet him at the door, and we talk for about 10 minutes or so, talking about my career and my life. His name is Joe. And if you follow me on social media or go to my website, stevewhitespeaks.com, you'll hear about Joe's story. A month later, Joe applies to Comcast based on our 10-minute conversation. And a year and a half later, he's one of our top performing employees in the entire country. And so that brief 10-minute conversation, talking about my journey, talking about my successes, talking about my failures, inspired him to go apply for Comcast without me knowing, without any strings being pulled. Mm-hmm. So think about that, Patty Ann. There's a song that goes, we all die twice. We die the day they put us in our grave. The second time is the last time someone mentions our name. We should all strive for a place that even after we're long gone, our impact is still being felt. And legacy. Case that opportunity to interact with him. So what jazzes me is making a difference in the lives of others, whether it's a spoken word, whether it's a coaching session, whether it's a hand up, not a hand out, whatever it takes. That inspires me. That gets me excited, knowing that I've been placed on this earth for a reason, making a difference. Because think about this, Patty Ann. You and I did not reach this spot on our own. Someone gave us a hand up, not a handout. And I really want to make sure people are clear about it. Handout is different than a hand up. A hand up is saying, I believe you have skills. I believe you have talent, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to display your talent. And when you get that opportunity, the sky's the limit. So being able to impact others, that really is what gets me jazzed, and also continue to beat my 10-year-old son at basketball and all sports, because at some point he's
all sport. Listen to this. He said,
at some point, Patty,
all sports.
Oh, I can beat him now. He's a 10-year-old. I can beat him at basketball. I can beat him at baseball. I can beat him at football. But he's 10. And
I wish you wouldn't be so humble, Steve. You know what? Turn around. He's going to be beating your butt.
You got it. But he's got to understand loss, because you and I know, Patty Ann, life is not a perfect road, is it? There are bumps, there are scrapes. We're going to get bloodied. But our ability to respond to that is really what makes it happen.
Okay.
In
So
our
true.
relationships, that ability to be authentic with people is really the crux of a relationship. And that's the relationship I want to have with my son.
Awesome. That is so great. So you brought up sports. I many times say you never know when life's going to throw you a curveball, right? So you have to be able to, we'll go back to basketball, to pivot. But since you did bring up basketball, and I do believe you are a Hoosier,
That's right.
I'd like to know how you feel about Bobby Knight's type of leadership compared to your type of leadership and the type of leadership that's prevalent today. Even, I don't know if you read the book, I think it's called The Miracle of St. Anthony with Bobby Hurley, right?
Yes.
And his son, I think it's his son, Danny, that's coaching at UConn now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in Connecticut for years.
Yeah.
One of my sons went to UConn. Very, very different styles of leadership. I would actually argue they'd be arrested today. And I'm not, I feel like we've gone from one extreme to the, I'm not really sure. So tell us a little bit about how you feel about that type of leadership as opposed to the uncompromising leadership that you live and that you write about in your book.
Yeah, where Bobby Knight got it right, because being a student at the school and knowing several of the basketball players.
Yeah, you were there when he was when he was coaching.
They loved Bobby Knight because Bobby Knight took care of them. He challenged them. He pulled the best out of them. He really challenged them and he cared about them. Landon Turner, who was a All-American center on the basketball team, paralyzed in a car accident. And do you know Bobby Knight raised money for him? He's still in contact with him. He took care of him. He made a real difference in Landon's life. So that's the part of Bobby Knight that I like. But the part I didn't like that I think is so devastating is he created us versus them mentality. And you and I have benefited from folks giving us a hand up because of our skills, because of our talent. And Bobby Knight position himself as, I'm the one that can do that for you, not this person over here. So the part
Give an example of that. Give an example of that, Steve, because I never looked at him that way. That's so interesting.
Yeah, for example, let me give you an example. He is now he's affiliated with the basketball team at Indiana because one of his ex-players, Mike Woodson, is now the coach. Mike Woodson was an All-American for Bobby Knight. He loves Bobby Knight. He stayed in contact with Bobby Knight. And so Bobby Knight has re-engaged with the university. But there were other coaches that were maybe not major allies of his that he didn't engage with the university when he still has so much to give. And I'm a Bobby Knight fan. I believe in Coach Knight. I think he has a lot of great qualities, but you can't be inconsistent in your love, your friendship, your support. Because even with our kids, even with our business partners, we cannot be inconsistent in how we approach relationships. And so that is the inconsistency of Bobby Knight that puts him on the outside of what I believe is his rightful place to be judged as a real mover and shaker and a game changer, is that inconsistency. And one thing in relationships, we can tolerate a lot of things, Patty Ann, but we cannot tolerate inconsistency. I remember one of my old bosses, people would always come in the morning. Is good Bob showing up today or bad Bob? And so everybody's focused on is good Bob showing up or bad Bob. And so now no one's focused on the business because we're all focusing on which Bob's going to show up. That is a fundamental part of leadership. And that's the only thing I would challenge Coach Knight to if I were with him one-on-one right now.
Interesting. Very interesting. So in terms of leadership, I read John Maxwell. One of my coaching certifications is from there. And, John Maxwell's I think is one of the greatest leaders ever. And his work, his writings has changed lives. And his definition of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Speak to that.
Yeah, I agree, because at the end of the day, people make a decision every single day Do they follow you or not? Let me give you an example. Great companies, they don't get 100% from their employees. They get 110%. Because see, each day I have what I call discretionary effort. And I make the decision, do I want to give that to Comcast or not? And when you're inspired by a company, you get everyone saying, I'm going to give discretionary effort. That's the extra step. Let me give you an example. Stevie has a soccer game on Saturday, and we leave a few minutes early because we want to stop by one of the Xfinity Comcast stores to say hi to some of our hardworking employees that are working on a Saturday on our way to the soccer game. Mm-hmm. That's discretionary effort. Mm-hmm. I'm taking time out of my life with my son to stop by. I'm going to hopefully teach him a lesson, but I'm stopping in there for 10 minutes to say, I just wanted to check on you guys. You all good? I know it's a Saturday. Everybody good? Then I move on. That's an example of giving that discretionary effort that I owe, that I get to make a choice. This is not the 9 to 5. This is my time when I decide to give that to you.
Yeah.
So when you can influence leaders enough to get to that point, then you know that you're on the right track. And you might say, well, how do I get that, Steve?
Steve, hang on just one second. Hang on just 1 second. I just want to let these people know I'm doing this. All right, they'll edit that out. If you hear, it should be okay. But okay.
So we were talking about influence,
discretionary, right?
And then how do you get that? Is when I demonstrate to you, Patty Ann, that I care more about you first than what you can do for me. And the first question I always start with in a new relationship, before we go anywhere, tell me about your personal hopes and dreams. Mm-hmm. And then once I lock in on that, and now I can weave everything through your lens of your hopes and dreams, that's how you influence leaders to do great things.
Right. Well, what you're doing is you're meeting the person where they are. Not where you want them to be, where they are. But what you said about the discretionary energy, I almost said income, but I think they're connected. Is when we talk about, there's so much poor leader. It's not leadership today. It's mandated, right? I could go on and on and on about that. But, they say, I think is it Richard Branson or somebody says, if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers.
Yes.
And part of that is if I know that Steve cares for me as a team member, as I don't like the word staff, as a team member, and he knows that not inappropriately, but he knows maybe someone in my family is sick, or maybe I'm struggling in my marriage, or whatever it is, right? And he spends 5 minutes, maybe just listening, because you can't solve any of my problems. But what happens is that sooner or later changes. Crisis only lasts so long. But now, when I don't have to do something, when I don't have to reach out to when it's not my job, all of a sudden I will remember that Steve doesn't just care about me in terms of output, but cares about me as a human. I will then give him, and in turn my company, and in turn my shareholders and my customers, that discretionary energy. And we don't have a lot of that left today. So that's brilliant.
That's exactly right. And you can't do it, Patty Ann, unless you're willing to be vulnerable. See, because when I'm vulnerable, I'm asking that question. And sometimes I might have to share a little bit more about me to submit that. Because if you're going through something, I might share with you, I went through that. And let me tell you how I dealt with it and what worked for me or what mistakes I made. So that vulnerability is what creates the connection to each other. And when you can create that connection, that's beauty. Because you and I, Patty, and we go into relationships trusting. Most people don't. They want you to prove to them, and that's fine, that you really have their best interests at heart. And that's okay. Go in understanding that.
So you're talking about, Stephen M.R. Covey, not Stephen, the dad, the 7 Habits, the son that wrote the book Smart Trust, right? And he talks about our generation will say you have to earn my trust. Anybody younger says, no, give me trust. And, people will say to me all the time when I'm coaching or consulting, like, they don't trust me. And my first response, and it stops them dead in their tracks, is, well, are you trustworthy? right? If a kid says, my mother doesn't trust me, like, well, are you trustworthy? They know what they're doing.
Right.
If your spouse doesn't trust you, well, are you trustworthy? Right. So let's go to the trust and the leadership. In business, I've noticed a man's life could be falling apart. Right. Steve, how's it going? Great. Good. Wife's crushing it. Kids getting all A's. Work is great. And no, it's not. Right. So there's that. A lot of businesses in the corporate world, entrepreneurs are a little different, but the corporate world, the thought of being vulnerable is, like you start twitching, it gives you anxiety, right? But there's an appropriate vulnerability that just makes you human.
Yes.
So I feel in order to create the trust, you have to make yourself vulnerable. So why do you think leaders today are petrified of being human and not just the old school? I'll just say it because I'm always throwing him under the bus, Jack Welch. I mean, I lived in Connecticut. I knew, right? Like, there's a lot of problems that trace back to that. So talk a little bit about that, the vulnerability and the trusting, and, it all has to appear good. I'm not talking about anything inappropriate, but it is good for people to see you as human.
Well, because most people are afraid they're going to get hurt. And so, Patty, and what I recommend folks is I start every morning alone. I reflect. Some people pray, some people meditate, whatever your deal is, find a way to get yourself ready to go. So each morning I pray. I feel like I put an armor on, ready for the day, because I know there'll be ups and downs. But what it does for me, it centers me and keeps me in the present. And when you're in the present, you can see what's right in front of you. Even when someone's telling you it's great, you can look at them. If you're present, you can listen to what they're saying or how they're acting or their body language to really understand.
I think it's your energy. You're feeling
that's
your energy.
Exactly right. And
that discrepancy. Yeah.
That's right, Patty. And that's why I think this work from home is a dangerous thing for particularly young leaders. Because one of the ways I know what's happening with my team is when I'm in a room and I see someone that's being really quiet, I'll engage them or I'll pat them on the back or I'll grab them for a cup of coffee. When you're isolated, it drives you deeper into that hole. And so that's why I get nervous about all of this work from home. I think there's certainly a balance, of course, but let's not get carried away with this. So therefore, as a
all right, I'm going to challenge you, Steve. Yeah. I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to challenge you on that. Women have been begging to work from home since we went into the workforce. Yeah. I cannot tell you the difference, how much stress it takes out of your life from not having to commute. Right?
Yes.
Or sitting there waiting for a meeting to start, throw my laundry in the wash, then on the way to the bathroom, throw it in the dryer.
Yes.
It sounds simple. Now, we used to say if the productivity gets hurt, nonsense. We know the numbers don't show that. So now what I tell people, and usually it's the older white leaders, quite frankly, that don't have to worry about picking their kids up from school because they have a wife that doesn't work or they have a nanny, right? And now they say it has to do with culture. Now, I agree with the whole culture thing. However, usually when they say culture, I tell people to interchange it and put the word control, because you cannot create a new paradigm with the old paradigm solutions. So I agree with you. There's something to be said for collaboration and creating that connection. And, when Wall Street talks about all these, the mentoring, there's not that much mentoring going on. I mean, who are they kidding? Stop it already. Just stop it already. And I understand the water cooler talk, but there are other ways to. Now, certain jobs you need it. There's no doubt. Right. But I know plenty of attorneys that commute to work, that go into their office, that close the door, that log on to their computer, go to the bathroom, don't leave to have lunch because God forbid you miss a billable hour. And they don't talk to anybody. So I do think we have to be careful. I don't think every company every job, every role. But I do think we have to go with the shifting tide. And then, I said to the younger kids, well, what about, having a relationship with the people you work with? And you know what they said? In so many words, I saw my father work for the same company for 19 years. And at the 20th years, he was eligible to retire and get a pension, and they laid him off. Yeah. I'm not doing that. I don't want to be friends with the people I work with. Now, that's extreme, but I do feel like, I don't know. I think we really have to be careful, and it's a paradigm shift, and nobody likes change, but COVID certainly proved it accelerated in 20 years. It took us, it would have taken us 20 years to do work from home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Patty, and that's why I think it's a balance, because we don't truly know the impact yet. Let me give you an example.
Yes. Agreed.
Let me give you an example right now. My son's in the 4th grade. And do you know the second graders at his school, it's a private school, those second graders are struggling with each other. And there are a lot of different relationship issues because their first 2 years of school were Zoom calls.
1,000%. 1,000% horrible.
And there was a smart lady, I think her name is Patty Ann, said 80% of business relationships are about people. I think that's what she said. I could be wrong, but they're about people. And so there's a balance.
I heard she's brilliant. I heard she's not just another dumb blonde.
Smart. So I put that halfway to say, look, let's create flexibility. Let's not mandate. But
Steve, hang on. I have to interrupt. I do have to interrupt you. Educating children as they're developing, I think that's comparing apples and oranges.
No, but let me tell you where it's different, Patty Ann.
Okay.
Some of my best learnings were sitting there in a room watching leaders on learning what not to do just as much as what I should do. Mm-hmm. So as a young leader, how do you get exposure to the CEO if everybody's always on Zoom or the senior vice president to learn? See, because I never lost sight. I work for Steve White Incorporated. I don't work for Comcast. Comcast purchases my services, and I'm glad about that. And so when I'm at work in those relationships, I'm learning because it's making Steve White Incorporated stronger because I'm learning from these.
Okay, Steve, I have to stop you. That's absolutely brilliant. I want you to talk more about saying you don't work, and you didn't mean just your role now. Yes. You meant throughout your career.
That's
I want you to talk more about that, because I do think we need to take individual responsibility for our career. Yeah. And there's this nonsense out there. Oh, I work for Goldman Sachs. I work for JP Morgan. I work for Salesforce. Yeah. You just said, no, you work for yourself. Talk about that. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
I work for Steve White Incorporated. Comcast purchases my services. And the reason they purchase my service is I'm always investing in my company, making it stronger. Let's be honest. It is a business relationship. Mm-hmm. I help Comcast sell products and goods, and they can pay back shareholders, and it's a business relationship. Mm-hmm. They're going to invest in me because I'm investing in myself. And so don't look at the work situation as you're making me do this. No, I willingly go because I learn and grow from those. That's helping my company grow stronger. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's how I think about it, as an investment in my company. If I have to commute 2 or 3 days a week, that's an investment in my company, because I'm going to learn, I'm going to develop relationships. I'm going to see how to do it, how not to do it. I'm going to learn how to do deals. I'm going to get a front row seat to all of that you can't get. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, because I had aspirations for hire, but somebody said, Steve, can you be the CEO of a company and work 9 to 5? I said, no.
No. Yeah.
You can have a great life here. You can have a great career, and we will purchase your services. But if you aspire to be president of the company, that's not going to happen. So you get to make that choice. Mm-hmm. I had higher aspirations. So I look at whether it's commuting or traveling or whatever as an investment in my company. Mm-hmm. And I think to change the mindset, you are now in control, not someone else.
Right. But what you said sounds like there is that element of you had a choice, right? What they're doing today is they're saying you have to be in, well, just say 4 days a week, right? Disney just came out with that. Well, I can see creative roles in Disney that might be necessary, but I don't know if everyone needs to be in. So, it's that.
But then you get to make a decision.
Right. But they're not saying that. They're mandating it.
That's right. So, but you have to then make a decision and say, for my company, is this setup beneficial to my company? If it's not, go out and quit tomorrow, but build your plan or build your exit plan if that does not fit with your values and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I like that.
In control. But if you stay in control, and I work for me, because guess what? Comcast is going to make the right decisions for itself. Goldman Sachs is going to make the decision. Disney will make it. You have to do the same thing. So I'm not going to quit tomorrow, but if it does not fit you, build your strategy. It might take a year to get there, and that's fine, but at least you got a plan forward.
Right. I like that. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the prevalent attitude culture, in spite of what's said, that companies are really about just the bottom line and it doesn't matter? You could have worked your fingers to the bone, and if your whole division is being let go, you are being let go. So what do you say to that?
Well, unfortunately, I believe it's true. Fortunately, a company like Comcast purchases my services. I happen to believe it's one of those companies that do care about people. At least that's what I believe, because I've seen so many examples of it. But I think you have to continue to look at it very objectively. It is a business relationship. When you become a public company, there are shareholders that need to get paid. There are people investing in your company, and they're entrusted with running the business. And so I never lose sight that this is a business relationship. It's an at-will relationship. I can leave and they can leave. We all have that right. And I think as long as you understand that, and as long as your company is being fed, and you're feeding the company, then it's a mutually agreeable relationship. But I think when people start losing sight of entitlement on both sides, that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, entitlement is a whole different conversation. Like, you're entitled to nothing.
That's a zero. You're entitled. That's why I call it a hand up. I just want somebody to give me an opportunity. That's all. That's all any of us could ask for.
Right. And many times we have to be responsible for making our own opportunities, as opposed to, like I always say, winners get it done and losers make excuses.
But one of the things, Patty Ann, that you said that I think I would love for our listeners to learn a little bit more about. You said, when people say, do you trust me? And then you say, are you trustworthy? So sometimes you have to check yourself. You have to understand what energy you're putting out there, because sometimes we attract what we put out there. And I'm not saying life is fair, because sometimes we do get bad breaks. We all get bad breaks. But this idea that what we put out there is very, very important. And so if you want to trust people, then be trustworthy. If you want to be loyal, then you want people to be loyal to you, then you be loyal. And sometimes you'll get your heart broken, but you just got to focus on what you do.
So success isn't a straight line, right? So talk about, and I feel that we learn more from our failures than we ever do from our successes. So share with the listeners a failure you've had that's not in the book, that you don't like to tell people, that you hate to admit, and oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that since she asked me this, and the lessons you learn from it, so that people will say, okay, so Steve White is human, he's not Superman, and you can be more relatable to the person climbing their way up.
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit about the book, but I don't know how deep I went. I got fired. And because Penny and I thought my purpose in life was to ensure that my family was never in poverty again. And so therefore I worked, and I was so focused on me. I was not focused on anyone else. And the less I gave, the more I felt I would get, and I would get my family out of poverty. And for a period of time that worked. But over time, I had no one following me. Back to leadership was influence. I thought I was leading. I looked over, no one was behind me. And I got fired. And I deserved it. Now, at the time, I didn't think I deserved it. But upon reflection, I wouldn't follow me, because I was all about me. And so I got fired as a result. I was embarrassed. My mother used to brag on me and talk about it. I wouldn't even tell her. I couldn't tell her. It would break my heart. And so that was a critical moment for me to flip the script to say, look, if I start investing in others, they will push me up to the top. That's how I got to become president of one of the largest companies in America, is my team pushed me up. I'll give you a good example. I worked for
hang on. Where in your career were you? How far along
I
when
was
you got fired?
fairly
Early?
young. I was maybe 24 years old. I was a sales manager leading 10 people. I had climbed the ladder. I think I was making $44,000 a year. I was on top of the world. I bought my first house, and I got fired because I was not caring for others. And what I find, Patty, and the more I invest in others, they push me to the top, and therefore that's how I get noticed. That's how people get promoted, is people push you up above everyone else, and that's how you get noticed. Not based on everything you do. Yes, you got to put in good work, but when you have others pushing you up, that's how you get noticed. And that's what happened to me. And how does a little kid from the housing projects of Indianapolis become president of Comcast West, leading 30,000 employees, $20 billion in revenue? It's because people push me to the top.
Okay, so Steve, but back then at 24, you were still pretty much a snot-nosed little kid, not that long out of the projects. How did you figure that out? Like, what influenced you, or why did you not take your bat and ball and go home?
Darnell Martin, who's no longer with us, Patty. And remember, we said you died twice. You died the day somebody put you away, and the last time somebody mentions your name. Darnell Martin's been gone 25 years, and I'm still talking about him because he grabbed me and said, son, I see something in you that you don't even see in yourself. But if you continue to operate and lead the way you're leading, you'll never realize your full potential. So it just took somebody
Who was this person to you at the time that you cared?
African-American executive higher up in the company. On my worst day, he called me and said, I see something else in you. And if you agree to invest more in others, not just yourself, I'll give you another chance. And so he grabbed me by the shoulder after beating me with a 2x4, not literally, but figuratively.
Yeah.
I moved to Chicago in another part of the company with American Hospital Supply. It was a big enough company that I could go to another division. And that's where my career took off.
So, wow, that's incredible.
Never know. That's why, Patty Ann, one of the things I want to share with your listeners from a relationship standpoint, studies have shown each of us will meet 4 to 5 new people every day. Maybe it's the Starbucks counter, maybe it's at the airport or whatever. And when our life is over, there will be 80,000 people that we have met and either established a relationship with or we didn't. And so I want each of our listeners to envision your days are over. You're walking through the stadium. There are 80,000 people that you've interacted with over your lifetime. Now, I'm not talking family. I'm talking about people you've met. And they're doing one of 3 things, Patty Ann. They're cheering, Patty Ann, Patty Ann, Patty Ann. Or they're booing, oh, that Patty Ann. Or worse, Patty Ann. Here's the worst. They're saying nothing.
Irrelevant. Yeah.
You're irrelevant. Your time was wasted. There are no fingerprints that you were even here. So every moment and every opportunity is presented to us to impact someone. And that's what Darnell Martin did for me. And although he's been gone 25 years, as long as I'm here, his name will never die. Wouldn't that be awesome if we all strive for that? That 80,000 people, when we're done and walking through that stadium, they're cheering because we made a difference in their life.
Awesome. So tell me specifically whom you were a Darnell for and how that played out.
Yeah. Most recently, president of Comcast West for 11 years. Succession planning is a big deal. A gentleman by the name of Rich Jennings, who I mentored and developed over a 10.5-year period, replaced me as the president of Comcast West. What an awesome opportunity. And I remember having a very difficult conversation with him about how he dressed. Very smart guy, But I said, Rich, people will see your outfit and your clothes before they will see you. Let's take that off the table so they can see the genius of Rich. And so that is a very—
You gave him a dress to success lesson, huh?
That's right. Don't let people judge you.
How was he dressed? What was he doing?
He was younger. And so you're familiar with hip hop, and it looks sharp, but you're a senior vice president, and that's not appropriate for this environment. Yes, they're going somewhere else. But for this situation, this environment, again, you can dress any way you want to. But if you want to be president of the company, there are certain ways that you have to dress. He accepted that advice. And how proud am I, where the company did not interview others. They made the decision based on my recommendation that he was the right person for the job. And now, hopefully, he's carried on the legacy, and he will impact others, and he will pay it forward. So I tell people, don't worry about how many people you're impacting. Got one. Start with one. And I share with you this Joe story, the UPS driver who's now with Comcast doing very well. Go to my website, stevewhitespeaks.com, my most recent blog. I talk about my relationship with Joe and how I was able to impact him in a positive way. And now he's doing fantastic things. So thank you, UPS, for giving us a star employee.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So what is the last book you reread and why?
Well, good. Great book, Halftime, by a guy by the name of Bob Buford, who's an old cable guy. He used to run Buford Cable. He sold out. But this book is called Halftime, and it talks about all of us, men and women. Once we reach a certain level of success, that's great. Now, what are you going to do with the next part of your life that is significant? The first half of our life, we're all operating, trying to develop a level of success for ourselves and our families. So once you've reached a level of success and your kids can eat at night and, your family's got shelter, what are you going to do significant with your life now? And so this book, Halftime, that's what inspired me to go write a book, develop a social media presence to share my leadership thoughts and perspectives, successes and failures with others, because now I'm trying to live a life of significance, because I've enjoyed a level of success. So this book, Halftime, it's not a big book, but I reread it on a regular basis because it keeps me focused on why am I here? What am I doing that's significant in making a difference? So how do I go impact multiple Joes, not just one Joe, not just one Rich? How do I go impact multiple Joes, multiple Riches? And you and I found, Patty Ann, whether it's through podcasts or social media, we have the ability to impact multiple Joes and multiple Riches. And so that's one of the paths that I've taken in a way to create a life of significance.
Okay, so that is great. So you're leveraging yourself now with your book, right? So talk about Uncompromised, and what are the nuggets, the takeaways, if there's just two things people can take away from that book, what would you want it to be?
The two most important days in your life, as Mark Twain said, the day you're born, the second is why. I talk about how do you find your why. I share with you in my book 7 pathways. Once you find and identify your purpose and your why, or your fight, whatever you want to call it, here are the pathways so you can lead a life of significance, impact, and legacy. That's what the book is about. And I weave in my life story because it is an American story that I think people need to hear more of. We hear about all the bad things. I want to share that the American dream is alive. It's there for the taking. Is it easy? No. But if you follow your purpose and why you've been placed on this earth, I promise you, you will enjoy a life of success, impact. I'm not saying how much money you're going to have. That's not what I'm promising you. I'm promising you that I believe you can live a life of success, impact, and legacy.
So how do you define success?
It depends on the person. For me,
for you,
I share very publicly, we struggle to have children. And so now to hear laughter in the house, of a little boy running around doing silly things, driving his mom crazy because he's doing little boy things. That is the definition of success. And then when he says, Dad, it's hard for me to say no when he looks at me with those eyes and says, Dad.
Yeah, your eyes are lighting up as you're speaking.
That's a huge piece. And then obviously being able to take care of my mother, who's now safely retired. She's 82 years old, enjoying a good life. She goes on vacations with us. She visits. So ensuring my family has a level of security, but being a dad, being a husband, hearing laughter, boy, there's nothing more special. So it changes over time. But that for me now, being a dad is a very special thing.
So early on when we started the podcast, I asked you what you were passionate about, and you really didn't answer. But I think I got my answer now, because it seems to me like being a dad.
Being a dad,
a family man.
And impacting others. I mean, and so I get to experiment with my own child, so I better do a good job, because there's no do-over.
Yeah,
but
right.
This idea, what really drives me is this ability to impact others in a very positive way is really, really what really gets me excited.
Awesome. All right. My last question before we wrap up, because I want to be respectful of your time, is what's the one song you can't live without?
There's an old song. I mean, there are two. My wife would love me to say Amazing Grace. That's one of her favorite songs.
Right. But she's not on the podcast.
Yeah, but my love song is a song called Always and Forever. It's by a group called Heat Wave. I think it's from the 70s. It is the most beautiful love song. And I remember it was played at my prom, and I have it on my little...
At your prom? Your high school prom?
At my high school prom.
Wow.
This was the early 80s, but this song still resonates, and I have it on my in my little Apple library that I play on a regular basis. It's just a simple love song, Always and Forever. Go listen to it by Heat Wave.
I think I do know, but I didn't know it was Heat Wave. I thought it was some other type of band.
I think it's Heat Wave, but I could be wrong. But I think it's Heat Wave. Somebody's going to look it up.
Always and Forever. Yeah. Is that it? Yeah, don't give up my day job. I know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful.
All right. So what's the information? What's the answer to the question that I wasn't smart enough to ask?
Yeah. Well, I think you got them all. You got them all. But I think this idea, how do you find your purpose and why? And I tell people, ask yourself these three questions. Number one, what are you passionate about? Mine is making an impact. Number two, what are you good at? Because sometimes they're not the same thing. So you got to connect the dots and get your kitchen cabinet to help you figure that out. So once you answer those two questions, then you ask yourself the third question. If I'm good at it and passionate, okay, got it. Would I do it for free? And if you could answer yes to those three questions, you found your purpose and why. And I promise you, if you focus on the process of living your why, the money will take care of it. I truly believe that in my heart. So that's the question. How do I identify why I've been placed on reserve? For me, start with those three questions. What am I passionate about? Then what am I good at? I have the two together. Then would I do it for free?
That's awesome.
Patty Ann, we're doing this for free. This is because we want to go impact others. We're away from our families doing this because we want to go impact others, and no one's sending us a big check for this. We're doing it because we believe in it.
All right. So tell people where they can find out more about you, where they can follow you, where they can get your book.
Great. Well,
totally unabashed self-promotion.
You've been great. Go to my website, stevewhitespeaks.com. Everything you need to know. You can identify how you can follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. You can read parts of the book and put it out there for everybody to take a look. And obviously, if you want to buy the book Uncompromising, just go to Amazon or wherever you buy your books, and it's available to you. But check out the website. We've tried to create a learning lab, so you can go hang out there, learn, track me, see other podcasts and other interviews I've done, and hopefully you'll be inspired.
Great. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Steve. This was so inspiring. This was so much fun. I am so appreciative, even though you're a Hoosier, two of my kids are Badgers, it's still all good. So thank you. And make sure you get his book and follow everything that Steve White has to share, because you will do nothing but grow, and he will enrich your life with his wisdom. So thank you.